Whitaker. When he was 2 years old, he suffered a severe head concussion after being pushed out of a car on Mother's Day by his jealous brothers, while on their way back from their grandparents. It said he was found by gypsies and used as a fortune teller because he wasn't right in the head. He was reunited with his family at the age of 8, but was still out to lunch. At 8 and a half, he cracked his skull again while playing basketball on roller skates on a concrete patio, and that brought him back to normal, as far as we can tell. Please welcome Gary Whitaker with his story, Big Al.
When I was 14 years old, I went to work for a fellow named Tom Murray. Now, Tom ran some ballpark concession stands, and I would soon discover that Tom, well, he was a bit on the crazy side. He was a teacher, later became a principal. And Tom was a heck of a storyteller. In fact, if there was anybody who inspired me to storytelling, it was Tom. And he would tell me some real whoppers. I mean, some stories just kind of blew my mind, and I decided that today I'm going to share one of those tales. According to Tom, when he was only 10 years old, maybe weighed 80 pounds wet, he was sent down to South Texas to live with his Aunt Beulah for the summer. Now, Aunt Beulah, well, she was out there. She was a little bit on the crazy side. He said she always looked like she was walking in a storm. Her eyes had that crazy look, but she could cook up a storm anytime she wanted to. She had a dock down below. Now, she lived down by a place called, on the Trinity River, called Liberty. And she had a small cabin and a small dock, and she had a small boat down there, and he could go down there, get on the Trinity River, and go fishing anytime he wanted to. And he always caught a couple of fish, and he would bring them up to her, and she would cook those things up. He said that she could make week old bread taste good. That was how good she was. Well, then there came a rainstorm. Now, she had told him some pretty wild stories, and he pretty much thought that she was out there, living in some foreign fantasy world. These stories included some pretty crazy things, like she was taking care and the wolf woman, the Navada, and that she had saved the life of Sasquatch one time and healed a wound on him. And she even claimed that she had a pet alligator. Now, she called this alligator Big Al, and she claimed old Big Al was at least 15 feet long, and he was a beast. Well, he wanted to see her feed Big Al. She claimed she would go down to the river and call to Big Al, and Big Al would come a-running. And she would have a basket full of fish, and she'd throw fish to Big Al, and Big Al would just chop it all down. And she said she could pet Big Al and even give him a hug without being eaten. Well, all this was fun. He went down to the river. He went out there, went fishing, had a good old time. And then came the rainstorm. Oh, it was a bad rainstorm. And the river rose up in its banks. And Aunt Beulah told him, whatever you do not go out in that boat until that river has settled down. Well, he waited a few days and saw the river had gone down, and he went down to get the boat. Now, Tom told me flat out, he said, I was not the brightest child in the world. I should have noticed how fast that water was moving, even though it was down low. And he said that he got in that boat and cut loose, and all he had was a pair of oars to guide the boat. And he said that boat took off like it was in lightning. He started shooting down the river, and he grabbing and trying to grab hold of trees and limbs to try to stop the boat. Couldn't stop it. And suddenly he hit a log, and the boat went over. Into the water he went. Now, Tom was a good swimmer. And he was fighting that water as hard as he could, but it was carrying him down, and he knew that he wasn't going to make it to the shore. He started screaming out, Aunt Beulah, Aunt Beulah. Well, at first he heard nothing, and then as he's struggling in the water, he sees Aunt Beulah up on the ridge screaming, but she's not saying anything to him. She's screaming, Big Al, get him! Big Al, get him! Save the boy! Well, here's what she was going to do about him. He's fighting in the water. He's drowning. He's going under. He's wondering what the heck is going to happen. And then he felt something up behind him, moving beside him. And he looks to his right, and there is an alligator there whose head was as big as his own body. It was the biggest alligator he had ever seen in all his life. And it rose up right beside him like it was trying to get him to climb up on his back. But Tom was terrified. And he tried to swim away from the alligator. And he's fighting to get away from that alligator. And the alligator slips back down behind him and disappears for a second. And as he's trying to get away from it, he looks back, and there's Big Al with his maw wide open coming at him. And he's screaming and shouting and trying to get away. And then suddenly everything went dark. He didn't know where he was. He tried to move, but he was all squeezed into a tight position, his arms and legs. And it smelled like death inside wherever he was. And then the thought that he might have been swallowed by that alligator hit him. And he started trying to get loose and to fight and to struggle, but he just couldn't do it. And then he heard Aunt Beulah calling out, Bring him to me, Big Al. Bring him to me. Here, boy. And sure enough, he felt them coming out of the water and walking up a steep hill that stopped and said, Now open up, Big Al, give him back. Suddenly there was light, and he was shoved out of that alligator's mouth and landed right in front of Aunt Beulah. And then he looked back to behind him, and there was Big Al looking at him hungrily. He jumped up screaming, and he grabbed Aunt Beulah trying to get away, but she stopped him and said, Don't worry, boy. He saved you. Big Al saved you. And he was like, ah, screaming and crying, climbing up her, trying to get away from him. He said, No, you settle down, boy. Settle down. He's not going to hurt you. Well, Tom sat down, but he kept a wary eye on that alligator who was no more than 5 feet away from him. He picked up a basket and pulled some big old fish out and tossed it to him, and he just swallowed it right up. And she tossed another and another, and then she put down the basket and she walked over to Big Al. She sat down beside him, and she wrapped her arms around Big old Al's neck and said, Thank you, sweetie, you're so good. And then she gave him a kiss on the head and gave him another hug, and I tell you, according to what Tom said, Big Al smiled. And not only did he smile, he's pretty sure he blushed. He scooted up the hill as fast as he could to get away from it. Then she told Big Al, Go ahead, go Big Al. We'll see you later. He slowly turned around and disappeared into the river. Now, Tom said he never saw Big Al again. Of course, he also said he never walked within 100 feet of the Trinity River again either. He wouldn't even take his kids swimming or fishing there anymore, up around Fort Worth where he lived. And he claimed that after seeing Big Al and being in the mouth of Big Al, that he never felt comfortable in small spaces anymore. But he said there was one thing that never quite got. He said in Aunt Beulah's bedroom there was a picture of her standing next to the thing that looked like a giant ape that had bandages around its arm. She said it looked like Sasquatch. And that's the story of Big Al and Tom. Thank you all so much.